Interpol 6, Case 1, The Vanishing Diplomat. Prologue. Shadows over Geneva. The rain over Geneva fell in thin silver needles, drumming against the marble facade of the Palais des Nations. Inside, the conference wing was sealed with layers of security. Guards stood at intervals, earpieces glowing faintly. A cluster of world leaders and corporate envoys gathered behind closed doors, their faces grave as they debated energy security in a fractured world. But one man did not leave the building that night. Ambassador Henri Duval, France's chief diplomat for the negotiations, had been seen entering his suite at 10:14 p.m. A single camera caught him adjusting his tie, tapping his keycard, and vanishing inside. The corridor remained quiet until morning, when security knocked and received no answer. The door was locked from the inside. When it was forced open, the suite was empty. His clothes, his luggage, his tablet, even his passport remained. But the man himself had disappeared, as though dissolved into thin air. The scandal erupted within hours. Was it kidnapping? Defection? Assassination? The Swiss police requested assistance, and Interpol responded with a call to its most unconventional unit. 6 investigators, each brilliant and broken in their own ways, were summoned to Geneva. They called them Interpol 6. Chapter 1. Assembly of 6. The rain had not stopped when Marcus Adler stepped out of the cab. He straightened his collar against the downpour, his tall frame unmistakably German, broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, his cheek marked with a scar that caught the light when he turned. The Hôtel de Bergue loomed ahead, the place where the 6 operatives were to gather before being briefed. Marcus carried himself with the quiet precision of a man who measured every step. He had been a detective long enough to know first impressions mattered, and that the team would be watching him as much as he would watch them. The lobby was warm, faintly perfumed with cedarwood. Sitting on one of the leather chairs was a man in a 3-piece suit, silver hair neatly combed, posture impeccable. He looked more like a banker than an investigator, but Marcus knew him by reputation. Jonathan Jack Havers, the British profiler who had once dismantled half of London's crime syndicates before scandal forced him out of MI5. Adler, Jack said in his clipped accent, rising with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. The man with the infamous raid. I almost didn't recognize you without the headlines. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he extended his hand. Havers, I thought you drank yourself out of service. Jack's smirk widened. I did, but apparently Interpol likes its misfits seasoned. Before Marcus could respond, the revolving door admitted a woman with raven-black hair tied in a knot, a long trench coat dripping rain. Irina Volkova moved like a shadow, her pale eyes scanning the lobby as though weighing each corner for threats. She nodded once, curtly, and took a seat without speaking. Her presence chilled the air. She was known for dismantling corruption in Moscow, but at a personal cost that remained whispered gossip. A quieter arrival followed. Aiko Tanaka, younger than the rest, her delicate frame wrapped in a navy coat. She carried a laptop bag like a shield. Her beau was polite, but her gaze avoided theirs, already calculating escape routes, as though the very act of human contact might reopen wounds. Interpol's diversity program is flourishing, Jack murmured to Marcus. Claire Moreau arrived next, her beauty softened by weariness. She radiated empathy, yet Marcus noticed how her eyes flickered at sudden noises, the faintest tremor of someone who had survived too much. She offered them each a warm smile, as though determined to be the healer in a room of jagged edges. Finally, the youngest burst in, Lucas Steiner. He carried himself with the restless energy of a soldier, jacket unbuttoned, scar visible at his collarbone. He grinned, shook Marcus's hand firmly, and slapped Jack on the shoulder in greeting. So, these are the legends I've heard about. Misfits indeed. They gathered in silence until the Interpol liaison entered. A Swiss officer, polished, efficient, laid a dossier on the table. Ambassador Henri Duval, missing since last night. Locked suite, no forced entry, no exit recorded on cameras. You 6 have been given authority to investigate discreetly. Geneva cannot afford scandal. The room grew still. Marcus flipped through the file, his scar tightening. A locked room disappearance. A diplomat at the center of global negotiations. and 6 fractured souls asked to work as one. Jack leaned back, swirling the whiskey he had somehow conjured. Well then, shall we solve the impossible? Chapter 2. The Vanishing Diplomat. The corridor leading to Ambassador Duval's suite was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Security tape had been stretched across the door, but it was already peeling at the edges, a reminder that secrets didn't hold well in Geneva, not with journalists swarming outside. Marcus Adler bent to inspect the lock. A standard electronic keycard entry system, undisturbed. He touched the scanner, frowning. Logs say he entered at 22:14. No one since. Locked from the inside, you said? Lucas Steiner asked, craning his neck. His Austrian accent softened the edge of his words, but impatience bled through. The Swiss liaison nodded. Correct. Our officers forced it open at dawn. No windows broken, no hidden passages, nothing. Jack Havers slipped on a pair of gloves, stepping inside like a man entering a stage. Ah, the classic locked room mystery. How charmingly old-fashioned. The suite was luxurious but cold. Cream walls, mahogany desk, untouched bed. On the desk sat Duval's tablet, still powered on, showing his calendar for the next day. His suitcase was neatly packed in the corner. A silk tie lay across a chair, abandoned mid-fold. Irina Volkova moved directly to the minibar, opening bottles, sniffing them one by one. No tempering, she said. And no sign he was planning to leave. Clothes unpacked, no notes. Claire Moreau drifted toward the bed, her eyes scanning with soft intensity. She touched the sheets gently, as though feeling for something invisible. He lay down at some point. The impression is light, restless. He did not sleep. Aiko Tanaka had already crouched by the desk, plugging her slim laptop into the tablet. Lines of code reflected in her glasses as her fingers flew across the keys. Encrypted messages. He received one at 21:58, just before returning here. High-level cipher, military grade. Marcus straightened. From who? Aiko shook her head. Still working on it, but this is not a simple diplomatic channel. Lucas paced the room, his eyes darting. He checked the balcony doors, locked from the inside. He rattled the hinges anyway. No way down. We're on the 6th floor. If someone left through here, he'd be a corpse on the pavement. Jack smirked. Unless he sprouted wings, which diplomats rarely do. Not helping, Marcus muttered. They worked in silence for several minutes. Each investigator gravitated to their strengths. Marcus sketched the room layout in his notebook. Irina cross-examined the liaison for timeline inconsistencies. Aiko unraveled digital threads. Claire sat quietly, watching them all, as though the mystery lay not in the room, but in the people within it. Finally, Irina broke the silence. Ambassador Duval was here. He received a message. He locked the door from the inside. After that, nothing. The cameras show no exit. Yet he's gone. Jack tossed his gloves onto the desk with a theatrical sigh. Gentlemen, ladies, the facts are straightforward. Either our French friend performed a vanishing act, or someone here is lying through their polished Swiss teeth. The liaison stiffened. Are you implying? I'm not implying, darling. I'm stating. Jack's smile was razor sharp. A disappearance this clean is never an accident. Someone wanted him invisible. The question is whether he walked willingly or was carried out like yesterday's laundry. Marcus's pen stopped moving. No signs of struggle, no blood, no broken glass. He looked up, eyes narrowing. Which means he trusted whoever came for him. A heavy silence followed. Claire's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Or he didn't leave at all. All eyes turned to her. She touched the wall near the bed, her fingers tracing the faint outline of a panel. "This building is old, renovated many times. You see this? An irregularity. If I were hiding a passage..." Lucas was at her side instantly, pressing his palm flat against the wall. He knocked twice, hollow. His grin spread. "Well spotted, Madame Psychologist." With a shove, the panel gave way, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft running between suites. Dust hung thick in the air, undisturbed for years, until now. Faint marks of a shoe sole marred the dust. Irina's eyes flashed. So he did leave, just not the way we were meant to believe. Marcus exhaled slowly, his scar tugging tight. This was no random disappearance. Someone with inside knowledge took him. Jack lit a cigarette despite the no smoking signs, his expression one of grim amusement. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes our missing diplomat either a traitor on the run or the victim of a conspiracy big enough to rewrite tomorrow's headlines. Claire's gaze lingered on the footprints in the dust. Whichever it is, he wasn't alone. Chapter 3. The Hunt Begins. Morning light spilled weakly through the clouds, turning Lake Geneva into a sheet of steel. The Palais des Nations buzzed with rumors. Journalists pressed against barriers, flashing cameras, shouting questions in half a dozen languages. Inside, officials whispered in corners, their eyes darting like prey sensing a predator. The Interpol 6 were given a temporary operations room on the 5th floor. Whiteboards, a projector, coffee that tasted like burnt tar, the usual trappings of crisis. Marcus Adler stood at the head of the table, arms folded, his scar pale against his skin. He spoke with the clipped cadence of a man who demanded order. "We have 3 leads. First, the encrypted message Duval received before his disappearance. Second, the hidden maintenance shaft. Third, potential suspects among the conference delegation." He tapped the board where he had scrawled names. Ambassador Duval's aide, Sophie Lambert, present in the building until late evening. Loyal, but perhaps too loyal. Richard Cole, American energy lobbyist, a man with more money than scruples. Sergei Orlov, Russian trade envoy, experienced in deception, a shadowy reputation. Unknown intruder, someone who knew the building's guts well enough to use forgotten passages. Jack Havers leaned back in his chair, cigarette dangling from his lips. "Your list is tidy, Adler, but incomplete. The person we should fear most is the one not listed on any manifest." Irina Volkova cut in, her Russian accent sharp. "The shaft. Only someone with access to blueprints could have known of it, which means inside help, likely Swiss security." The liaison officer stiffened. "That is a dangerous accusation." Irina's gaze was ice. "So is kidnapping a diplomat." Before the argument could flare, Aiko Tanaka lifted her head from her laptop. "I've broken part of the encryption. The message came from a ghost server routed through 5 countries. The origin is masked, but..." She clicked, projecting text onto the screen. "Midnight, lake, no witnesses." The room went still. Marcus stepped closer. "It's an arrangement, a meeting." Claire Moreau rubbed her temples, her voice soft. "A meeting Duval agreed to, or was compelled into." Lucas Steiner cracked his knuckles. "So we go to the lake, tonight, simple." Jack's laugh was bitter. "Simple? Nothing about this is simple. Either Duval walked into the water with his own feet, or someone put him there. In either case, I prefer not to end up sharing his fate." Marcus ignored him. "Tanaka, trace the full path of that message. Volkova, discreetly check Swiss maintenance records. Who had access to those shafts? Steiner, with me, will inspect the passage further. Moreau, speak with Lambert, the aide. See if Duval confided anything unusual." They dispersed with silent efficiency, each swallowed by the corridors of the Palais. Later that day, Claire found Sophie Lambert in the cafeteria, hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of tea. The young aide's face was pale, eyes red from sleeplessness. Claire slid into the seat opposite her with a gentle smile. "You were close to Ambassador Duval." Sophie nodded, tears threatening. "He was like a father, dedicated, tireless. But lately," she broke off, biting her lip. "Lately?" Claire coaxed, voice warm but steady. "He seemed frightened. Not of the talks, something else. He told me once, 'If I disappear, it will not be because I wanted to.'" Claire's stomach tightened. She reached out, covering Sophie's trembling hand. "Thank you. That helps more than you know." Meanwhile, Marcus and Lucas crawled into the maintenance shaft with flashlights. Dust swirled around them. The footprints led forward, smudged but visible. "Two people," Marcus muttered. "One heavier. Duval, most likely." Lucas's grin faded. "And the other?" "Whoever let him out." They emerged into an adjoining storage room, stacked with crates of bottled water and conference supplies. The exit door led straight to a service corridor that bypassed cameras. A ghost's pathway. "Professional," Marcus whispered. "Inside job," Lucas agreed, his jaw tightening. By evening, the Interpol 6 reconvened. Irina placed a folder on the table. "Maintenance records. 2 staff had access last week. 1 is accounted for, hospitalized after an accident. The other," her eyes narrowed, "still missing." Jack exhaled smoke, tapping ash into an empty cup. "So our phantom janitor spirits away the ambassador. Delightful." Aiko interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "The message, it's confirmed. The meeting was set at Lake Geneva. Midnight. The day Duval vanished." Marcus's gaze swept over them all. "Then tonight, we go to the lake. Whatever happened to Duval, we will find traces there." Irina closed the folder with a snap. "Or bodies." The rain began again outside, rattling against the windows like impatient fingers. Chapter 4. Beneath the Surface. Midnight wrapped Lake Geneva in a quiet veil. The rain had stopped, leaving the promenade slick, the air crisp with the scent of wet stone and faint engine oil drifting from the harbor. The Interpol 6 spread out methodically, flashlights sweeping over benches, docks, and the black stretch of water. Marcus Adler checked his watch. 0001. The time mentioned in the encrypted message. "This is where it was meant to happen," he said. His voice carried no drama, only certainty. Irina Volkova crouched by the edge of the pier, her gloved hands brushing over damp concrete. "2 sets of prints, here." She traced them with precision. One smaller, likely Duval's polished shoes. The other, heavier, work boots. She glanced up. The same as in the maintenance shaft. Jack Havers leaned lazily against a lamppost, cigarette glowing in the dark. "So the ghost janitor walks our ambassador to a midnight rendezvous. Romantic." "No boat was logged here that night," the Swiss liaison muttered, frowning. Aiko Tanaka adjusted her glasses, kneeling beside Irina. "But there was a boat. Look." She shone her light at the waterline, where a faint rainbow shimmer floated. Diesel residue. A small craft, perhaps unregistered, collected him. Lucas Steiner was pacing along the dock, eyes sharp. And if it collected him, where did it take him? Geneva is ringed with private marinas. Marcus remained silent, studying the lake as though it might answer. He finally spoke. "If Duval left by boat, it means planning. He could not have organized this alone. He was either abducted or he staged his own disappearance." "Which?" Jack pressed, smoke curling from his lips. Marcus's scar caught the lamplight as he turned. "That's what we're here to learn." They split tasks. 1. Aiko set up a portable antenna, scanning for any signal traces along the lake. 2. Irina and Lucas examined the dock further, cataloging the prints. 3. Claire stood quietly, her gaze on the water, lost in thought. Marcus approached her. "You see something?" Claire's expression was distant. "Not see, feel. Duval came here under pressure. He didn't trust this meeting, but he came anyway. He was afraid, but resigned." She turned to Marcus, her eyes steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He was meeting someone he knew." Marcus frowned. Someone inside the conference. Yes, her voice was firm now. Not a stranger, a colleague. Aiko's laptop beeped softly. She looked up, eyes wide. I've picked up fragments. The ghost server that sent Duval the message transmitted again, from within the city. Very close, less than 2 kilometers. Irina straightened. So whoever lured him here is still nearby. Lucas's grin was grim. Then we hunt. Jack flicked his cigarette into the lake, the ember hissing out. Before we chase shadows, remember, if Duval was complicit, then the person we're hunting is not just his abductor, they're his partner, perhaps even his executioner. The group fell silent. Marcus finally spoke, voice low but commanding. We reconvene at dawn. Tanaka, trace the server. Volkova, pursue maintenance staff records. Havers, build a suspect profile from the conference delegates. Moreau, stay with Lambert. Steiner, with me, will pressure Swiss security about unlogged boats. The lake lapped gently against the pier, as if mocking them. The diplomat was gone, but his trail was not yet cold. Chapter 5. Truth in the Water. The morning broke without warmth. Gray clouds hung heavy over Geneva, and the lake reflected nothing but steel. The city stirred with unease, rumors were spreading faster than facts, and journalists swarmed like gulls around the Palais des Nations. Inside the Interpol operations room, the 6 gathered again. Maps of the lake sprawled across the table, alongside maintenance records, transcripts of encrypted chatter, and a growing list of names underlined in red. Marcus Adler set down a coffee he had not touched. We pursue 2 fronts, the political, who benefits from Duval's disappearance, and the personal, why he agreed to a meeting he knew was dangerous. Irina Volkova's eyes were cold as she spoke. If this becomes public, France will accuse Switzerland of negligence. The Russians will blame the Americans. The Americans will shout back. Peace talks will collapse. Billions in contracts, energy stability, borders. She shrugged, though the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. Everything unravels. Jack Havers smirked, his voice silk over steel. And in the middle of it all, one French diplomat who may or may not have drowned in his own deceit. The politics are simple. Chaos is profitable. Someone wanted that. Aiko Tanaka pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, scrolling through her laptop. I've traced fragments of the ghost server. Whoever sent the message moved through a network of private satellites leased by a shell company. The shell ties back to a consulting firm in Brussels. Marcus leaned forward. Corporate money? Yes, Aiko replied. Energy lobbying groups, at least on paper, but the routing was deliberate. Someone wanted us to see Brussels. Jack chuckled dryly. Ah, the art of misdirection, like a magician showing you his right hand while the left slips the card away. Claire Moreau, who had been silent, finally spoke, her voice soft yet certain. You are all circling the same thought, but listen, Duval was not only a diplomat, he was a man who confided in his aide that he feared something. That is not politics, that is conscience. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the morning rain. Lucas Steiner tapped a pen against the table, restless. Then maybe his conscience got him killed. Or saved him, Claire countered. Irina's eyes narrowed. Saved him? He is missing, not safe. Do not confuse sentiment with fact. Claire met her gaze evenly, though her hands trembled slightly. Facts are meaningless until interpreted, and interpretation requires understanding of the human soul, something you avoid, Irina. For a moment, the Russian and the Frenchwoman locked eyes, 2 wounded souls clashing. Marcus intervened, voice cutting through. Enough. The facts remain. He was taken to the lake. We need proof of what happened there. Without it, we argue into fog. The discovery. That afternoon, Marcus and Lucas joined Swiss divers at a private marina just east of the city. Rain slicked the wooden planks as they watched the divers vanish beneath the dark water. Minutes dragged into an hour. Lucas shifted impatiently, his soldier's body wired for action. You think we'll find him? he asked quietly. Marcus's jaw worked. I think we'll find what's left of him. The lake answered with silence, until one of the divers broke the surface, shouting in French. A rope was pulled, dragging something bulky, wrapped in lakeweed, toward the shore. The men lifted it onto the pier, a body, waterlogged, bloated, the face swollen almost beyond recognition. But the suit was unmistakable, a diplomat's suit. Lucas swore under his breath. Marcus pulled back the ruined collar, revealing a diplomatic pin. Duval. The ambassador was dead. The fallout. By evening, the news could not be contained. Whispers leaked, then headlines screamed. French ambassador found dead in Lake Geneva. The Palais erupted in chaos. French envoys demanded answers. Swiss officials scrambled. Russian and American delegates accused one another with carefully veiled threats. What had been peace talks was dissolving into a blame game. The Interpol 6 huddled in their operations room as the storm grew outside. Jack poured himself another whiskey, his fifth since morning. And so the game changes, from disappearance to murder. Everyone's nerves are aflame, which makes everyone careless. A perfect time to strike. Irina's voice was sharp. Strike at whom? Without evidence, we accuse shadows. Claire's face was pale. He was afraid. He told Sophie Lambert so. This is not random. It was inevitable. Aiko turned her laptop to the group. I extracted Duval's final files. Before he left his suite, he drafted a message, unsent. It reads, if anything happens, look to the aid of the Russians. Trust no one. The room fell silent. Marcus rubbed his scar, the weight of the revelation pressing on him. Then Sergei Orlov becomes our primary suspect. Jack chuckled bitterly. Of course it's the Russians. How perfectly neat. Which means it's almost certainly not the Russians. Irina's jaw tightened, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Orlov is clever, ruthless. If Duval named him, it is because he had reason. Do not dismiss it so quickly. Marcus stood, his presence commanding. Tomorrow, we speak to Orlov directly. If he is innocent, he will show us cracks. If guilty, he will make a mistake. And if he makes neither? Lucas asked. Marcus's eyes darkened. Then the true killer walks among us still, and the world teeters closer to war. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The interrogation room at the Palais was nothing more than a converted conference chamber. White walls, a long oak table, 2 bright lights. Yet as Sergei Orlov entered, flanked by 2 Swiss guards, it felt like a stage. He was a tall man, late 50s, his silver hair brushed back, his suit immaculately pressed. Orlov moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. When he sat, he placed his hands flat on the table, his cufflinks gleaming. Marcus Adler stood opposite him, arms folded. Jack Havers lounged to his left, cigarette unlit but dangling suggestively from his fingers. Irina Volkova sat rigid, her icy gaze locked on her countryman. Aiko typed quietly in the corner, while Lucas Steiner leaned against the wall like a coiled spring. Claire Moreau remained nearest the door, her presence calm, observant. Marcus opened the exchange. His German accent was clipped, deliberate. Ambassador Duval is dead. His body recovered from the lake. You were named in his final draft message. Orlov's brow arched, though his expression remained smooth. Named by whom? By Duval himself, Marcus replied. He wrote, if anything happens, look to the aid of the Russians. Trust no one. Explain why. Orlov's smile was faint, practiced. Convenient. A dying man points the finger at Moscow. How very Cold War. Tell me, gentlemen, does it not seem too obvious? Jack leaned forward, tapping ash that wasn't there. Oh, it's obvious, Orlov. But obvious doesn't make it false. Where were you between 2200 and 2300 the night Duval vanished? Orlov's eyes flicked to Irina before returning to Jack. In my suite, reading. I am not required to prove my alibis to British failures, am I? Irina's jaw clenched. You had motive. The French resisted Russian energy contracts. Duval was outspoken. His removal serves your interests. At last, Orlov's composure cracked. He leaned forward, voice low, his Russian accent thickening. Do not lecture me, Devushka. I know who you are. The journalist whose sister died because she did not know when to stop digging. You should tread carefully. The room tensed. Lucas pushed off the wall, fists tightening. Marcus raised a hand, keeping him back. Jack's voice cut through, dry as ever. You see, Sergei, that's the thing about threats. They always sound more convincing when you're innocent. But right now, you sound guilty as hell. Orlov chuckled, though no humor reached his eyes. And yet, you have no evidence. Only the words of a frightened man. Perhaps Duval feared me, perhaps not. Fear does not equal guilt. Claire spoke then, her voice soft but steady, drawing all eyes. But fear does reveal truth. Duval trusted you once, didn't he? That's why your betrayal mattered. The draft was not accusation, it was confession of his own mistake. He had placed his faith in you, and it destroyed him. Orlov's hand twitched, the first real fracture in his facade. His polished calm wavered just for an instant. Aiko's voice broke the silence, quiet but clinical. Server logs confirm. The encrypted message to Duval originated from a network that intersected with your aide's communications, Orlov. Whoever sent it used her clearance to mask the origin. Irina's eyes flashed. Your aide, that is the link. Not just you. Marcus stepped closer, his voice hard as steel. Where is she? Orlov hesitated, a pause too long. It was enough. She left Geneva yesterday morning, he admitted finally. She said she was unwell. I did not question it. Jack's smile was sharp. Of course you didn't, because you already knew where she was going. The tension in the room thickened. Outside, through the glass, delegates passed in hurried conversations, their expressions strained. Everyone knew a storm was brewing. Everyone feared where it would strike. Orlov exhaled, spreading his hands in mock surrender. You want the truth? My aide, Natalia Kirova, is clever. Too clever, perhaps. If she acted, it was not on my orders. But if you find her, you will find your answers. Until then, gentlemen, and ladies, you have nothing. Marcus stared at him, silent. He knew a half-truth when he heard one. Finally, he turned to the guards. Escort him back. He does not leave Geneva. As Orlov rose, he leaned close to Marcus, his whisper sharp as a blade. You are hunting wolves in a city of foxes. Be careful you do not get eaten first. When he was gone, the room erupted. Irina's face was pale with fury. He knows more. He is protecting her. Claire shook her head. He is protecting himself. She frightens him. That means she is dangerous. Aiko closed her laptop softly. And she is gone, which means she is already 2 steps ahead. Jack lit his cigarette at last, the flame reflecting in his tired eyes. Well then, children, the game just changed. The murderer has a name. The question is, how many bodies will she leave before we catch her? Chapter 7. Fractures and Bonds. Night settled heavy over Geneva, pressing the lake into a black mirror. The city still thrummed with unease. Press conferences shouted half-truths, delegates met behind locked doors, and the death of Ambassador Duval had already been twisted into a dozen political weapons. But in the operations room, the Interpol 6 sat in silence. Aiko projected the last image from airport surveillance, a slender woman with auburn hair beneath a gray scarf moving briskly through the departure lounge. Natalia Kirova. Her face was calm, unhurried. In her hand, a leather satchel. Her passport scanned at 6:12 yesterday, Aiko explained. Destination, Istanbul. From there, unknown. Either she switched flights or had multiple identities prepared. Marcus Adler's scar caught the fluorescent light as he leaned closer to the screen. Istanbul, he muttered, a crossroads of empires. If she wanted to disappear, there are few better places. Lucas Steiner slammed his fist lightly against the wall. So she slips through our fingers, and Duval's death becomes a pawn in political theater. What was it all for, then? Irina Volkova's reply was ice. It was for the truth, and the truth is this. Kirova is no mere aide. She is a player, possibly more dangerous than Orlov himself. Jack Havers exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. Oh, I'll drink to that. I saw it in Orlov's eyes. He wasn't protecting her. He was terrified of her. Which means, my friends, that the fox has slipped the coop and the wolf is loose in the henhouse. Claire Moreau folded her arms, her voice low, almost prayer-like. And when the wolf runs free, more blood will follow. It always does. For a moment, no one spoke. The 6 investigators, each scarred in their own way, each carrying shadows, sat in the quiet weight of unfinished business. Marcus finally broke it. We follow her, wherever she goes. Aiko glanced up. Interpol will not authorize pursuit, not without clearer evidence. They will say the case is closed, an unfortunate drowning. Jack's smile was sharp, bitter. Then perhaps we don't ask for permission. Irina's gaze flicked to Marcus, daring him. Would you disobey orders? Risk everything? Marcus's jaw tightened. For justice, yes. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly across the Alps. Aiko tapped a few keys. On the wall, the Istanbul flight map glowed, a single red thread stretching across Europe into shadow. Claire whispered, almost to herself, "The game is only beginning." The others turned toward her, and in that dim-lit room, something unspoken passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but something like resolve. The Interpol 6 were no longer simply reacting to a crime. They were chasing something larger, darker, an unseen hand pulling strings across borders. And Natalia Kirova was only the first shadow in a growing storm.